Welcome to another episode of the Cheap Champ Podcast. It is I, your host with the most, and I'm here with a new guest. But before we get started, before we get into that and I introduce my guest, got to pay the bills. If you have questions about financial literacy, you want to get your budget together, you want to get that credit in order, you want to get that nice car, that new house, and move out of that dirty apartment with roaches, go to www.stressmoneyless.com. They will help you with all your financial literacy needs. And we want to thank our podcast sponsor, Cheap Not Broke. If you're cheap, you'll never be broke. And go to www.cheapnotbroke.com and grab a t-shirt and support. And today we have a new guest. And would you care to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Dorena Johnson. I am the owner of Redefined Ed, a consulting business that works with schools and businesses on how we can include diversity, inclusion, and equity.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dorena, for coming today. We appreciate you being a guest. And before we get started and I'll get into all that, there's something interesting about yourself. And you are new, very, very new to the entrepreneurial field. So, and you just left your professional career to pursue entrepreneurship 100%. Congratulations. Welcome to the club. It's a struggle, but it's also the best feeling you'll ever get when you get paid. So I'm sure you already know about all that. So, but before we get into your business, let's talk about what made you leave and become 100% entrepreneur. Because me, myself, I've done it, got on unemployment, money ran out, I got to go back. Bills are due. I'm tired of eating crackers. I want to go back to eating salmon, mashed potatoes. So what made you say, you know what? I'm leaving. I'm going to pursue this 100% and not just part-time.
Great question. So I've been in education for 10 years. I was an administrator for 4 of those 10 years, which absolutely love my students, love my kids, love my community. And I was at my last employment for about 8 years, and looking at the state of our education system, I saw that there needed to be a change. I felt as if I needed to be that change. I've always wanted to move more into educational policy and reform since I started. And when it was time for me to leave, I left my job. I made the decision to cut the ties, and it was just the perfect timing for me to say, Dorena, what is it that you want to do? How are you going to make a difference? How are you going to get those dreams across? Because right now you're unhappy in your current profession, being an administrator. You're unhappy with the amount of hours, the amount of work that you're doing. You're not sleeping. You're stressing yourself out, and you don't feel as if you're doing enough. You have to make a change, and I made my change.
Did COVID-19 have any did that help influence your decision to leave? Because a lot of people, with lockdown, you're like, you know what, I'm home. I'm already doing good. So let me just go ahead and not go back. Was that it? Or did you already have this lined up in this decision in order before you COVID-19 started?
So in honesty, I was not planning on leaving. And I made the decision to leave at the end with another coworker of mine. COVID-19, it really exacerbated the educational crisis that we're currently in. And it made it very, very real to me that at the end of the day, we can't continue to put the amount of stress on teachers and students. And there has to be another way that we can go around education. There has to be something. And be part of that, as your administrator, right? You're getting demands from the top, and you have to have them go down to the bottom, right, to your students, and you're passing them down. And it felt as if I was a part of a problem that I felt like I could be able to make a change in.
So you basically saw everything on the inside and said, you know what, I can make this better. So you basically took the house phone and turned it to a cell phone, and you took the cell phone, turned it to an iPhone. I get it. That's the same thing with me. I did the same thing. I said, you know what? Talking about money, it's very uncomfortable, especially when you don't have any. I don't want to talk about what I don't have. So, but you need to understand it before you get it. So I totally get that space of, coming from an industry and wanting to improve it. Now, I personally don't come from, I come from accounting, so that's corporate finance. However, personal finance is more important, because if you don't understand your personal, how are you going to help anybody else or help your family or anything? So I definitely understand that. Far as when you left, what were some of the preparations that you made to leave? Because you got people who leave their job and that's their last check. They don't have nothing in the bank. I'm like, well, you going back to work next week. So, what were some of the preparations that you made to leave?
Uh, well, in the split with my job, one, it was amicable. So I was very fortunate enough that I got my severance and I got my payout. So I really had a nice nest egg. Prior to that, one of the things I was really proud of with, and you know what, when you brought up COVID, that was very real because I'm not leaving the house, I'm not eating out, I'm not going out with my friends, right? So I did have some disposable income, and I had a really good nest egg of savings that I'd been working on that I was really proud of. So I had a good amount. So I've been pretty safe. I'm not gonna lie, I've been pretty safe having those backup plans, monetary backup plans that I've been able to say I can take time to do what I want to do right now. I've never done this before. I know that many people are the same way, where it's like, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to work till I'm 65, I'm going to retire, I'm going to do all of those things, and I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait till this, wait. But I was in a position that said, you can take that savings and you can do what you want to do at this time. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, okay, you're going to get this next degree, you're going to get this. You can do that right now.
Okay, and yeah, because man, some people love getting degrees. Degrees don't always turn into dollars.
Yes.
I mean, you got 4 degrees. I don't think that's going to pay you more than a third. Experience pays more than degrees in some cases. That's just what I experienced. What do you feel is the problem with education? Because there's a ton of problems with it. I think school lunch is a problem. Okay, school lunch is nasty. French fries are not vegetables. Okay, kids need real vegetables and not steamed broccoli. Kids, the elementary kids don't want steamed broccoli. So, in my eyes, school lunch is a problem. I'm sure you have another level of school problems. So, what do you see in the problem of education?
Uh, Very broad and big question that I'm going to just try to break down my top.
Well, okay, what is your company going to tackle in education? Excuse me.
Yes.
Let me be more specific. What is your business, Redefined Ed?
Yeah.
What are they going to tackle in education?
So our biggest focus right now is diversity, inclusion, and equity. So how does that show up in our schools? Are our schools really doing what they need to have a diverse staff, to have diverse students, and to have a curriculum that meets the needs of multiple groups of people? It's that hidden curriculum, right? If we're only teaching about the winners of history, then what does that say for the rest of all of these different types of history? How much Asian history are we teaching? How much Latinx history are we teaching, right? What about those Black voices that were there in the American Revolution that still are not heard? So what we aim to tackle is looking at curriculums, looking at professional developments that speak to the needs of both students and educators, and how can we make our school more equitable, that every single student is successful. Looking at special education services, looking at how often are students of color being reprimanded and things like that. So really and truly, it's what I call an equity audit. So looking at what are our systems that exist and how can we expand and build on those things to really make sure that our school is fully inclusive.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and say it. It's ran by white folks, and it's the white folks' way. So, how do we bring diagnosis? Because you got school boards are majority white, county superintendent, just large groups of white people. So, what would make them say, "Well, let's teach about Asian history. Let's teach about Latinx." That's a strange word, Latinx. You know what? Side note, why are they always changing the name of people? First off, your colors, then your blacks, then Negroes. Why can't we just be one thing? But that's another conversation. I don't understand that, the diversity inclusion. What's this neat thing they have right now? Some new program where they're about race, where they're not, I don't know the exact name for it, but when it comes to diversity and inclusion, it really boils down to like certain neighborhoods, because you got black neighborhoods, white neighborhoods, but they're not teaching you that. Like you go to a Chinese neighborhood, I'm pretty sure they're not teaching, a lot of Chinese culture because it's still state, education is ran by the state. So how are you going to come in and convince the state, these Caucasian people, that we should change and diversify what we're doing?
So when we talk about those, I think the biggest thing we have to talk about is how, yes, there are very much so white people that are at the helm of this, but there's also people that really want to make those changes. And when a school asks, it's one of the mandates for New York State is DEI. How is your school working towards this?
Can you tell the listeners what DEI means?
Yes, diversity, inclusion, and equity.
Okay, that was me. I didn't know what it meant. Thank you.
Or DEI or DIE. It depends on whoever's saying it. It kind of mixes up. And you'll see me kind of use it interchangeably as well. So it's one of our New York State mandates of how can we make sure that our schools are meeting the needs of everyone. Curriculum is something that is ever changing. Curriculum is the backbone of every school. So yes, we have a New York State curriculum that has to be taught, but it's how much of it how much time on it that we spend, right? It's broad. Our curriculum is very broad. If we teach our big topics, great, right? Those are the things that are going to help us. For example, in New York State, our reading exams at the end of the year. But within that, we can also make sure that we're making sure that when we talk about the American Revolution, it was actually the first instance of police violence in America, right? We can talk about how we can problematize history. We can problematize our science curriculum, right? Who's teaching these things? When we talk about Islamic scholars and math and those types of things, that's how we can really diversify our curriculum. It's something that people want to know about. We have to be able to share in these conversations. We have to be able to say, hey, perhaps this curriculum isn't fitting the needs of everyone, and how can we make sure that it can? That's what we do.
I understand, because my first client was a middle school, Compton Middle School. That's where I took my program and I got paid for it, and that was great. What I also understood is personal finance is not in the schools. And when it seems like they don't teach you the things that you really, nutrition, that should be nutrition from kindergarten through 12th grade, because as you get older, you eat different things. You need to learn what to eat and what not to eat, because if your family, doesn't have a lot of money, you're not going to know, hey, I can go eat, get vegetables and eat these different things. You're not going to know that. Trades. Everybody's not going to college, because I've had this conversation with several people. There's only a few options after school. You can go to the military, you can go to college, or what's the third? You can go get a low-paying job at 18 years old. There's not really much you only have a few options. So I don't even feel like they're really giving kids a chance. So I definitely think what you're doing is, I totally get it, because I'm on the personal finance side of things. And, things just got to change. It's with the remote learning and, kids aren't going in every day. Do you think it would be an issue with kids as far as interacting with each other? Because they've been away for so long, and now you're online. And then when you're getting in person, you don't have social skills. You have to be able to read body language, and everybody can't do that.
So I think a lot of what you just said was really poignant, because we're talking about equity, right? And we're talking about food deserts and what that does. So we can't say nutrition is a problem if we're not fixing the larger problem, right?
Right.
Is that where are those stores that kids can buy fresh foods, or families can buy fresh foods, right? Their nutrition is based on where they live. And unfortunately, if you live in, for example, Harlem is a big food desert in New York, right? My kids were eating bodega sandwiches every day, and bacon and cheese and chopped cheese and things like that, right? That's an equity issue. And that's what we aim to fix. When we talk about finance, our students should be learning about finance. They should be learning about trades, right? It's not just certain neighborhoods that get those things. And that's what we have to be angry about. So to answer the second part of your question, I just wanted to highlight that I really enjoyed what you said before, is that how do we deal with our students that are coming in after COVID is our social emotional learning. That's also part of equity and inclusion, right? And it's called SEL. That's the short version, social emotional learning. That needs to be part of our curriculum as well. We can't just talk about facts and figures. We have to talk about, how do my students learn? How do they want to be interacted with? And how can we make sure that we give them space and time to reflect and think about their own thinking about their own learning? If we don't give them that, then what are they supposed to do? When we talk about interaction, it's one of our basic human instincts is for interaction. It might be different for young people, right? Some of them really want to sit, and they might be sitting next to someone, but they just want to type to them. And that has to be okay as well, right? And there's going to be more kids that want to be face-to-face because they've missed that, because that's how they learn best. But we have to be really open to all those different types of learners. And that really just fits into what we're talking about, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's being open. One thing that I think is also important that I think people often miss with schools is it's not just our kids. Our kids, yes, are our main focus, but we have to keep our teachers happy and think about the same things that we're talking about with our kids for our teachers. How do our teachers learn? How do they teach? How can we make sure that they are happy? We're in one of the worst teacher recessions in the world right now. And we knew it was happening. When I got into education, when I first left, when I first graduated from undergraduate, it was like, what are we going to do? There's no teachers. And now I'm telling you, we have schools that have 60% staffed, and the rest are substitute teachers, uncertified teachers, things like that. We're in a teacher recession. If our kids don't have teachers, we don't have a school.
What do you think is the main reason for the teacher recession?
That's one of the reasons. Like I said, it's the long hours. Thank you. That's perfect. It's the long hours. It's the amount of work that we're putting on our educators. It's the not listening from administrators many times. Not saying that this is all the time, but we have to be able to have an open communication from students to teachers, that a student feels comfortable talking to the teacher, that a teacher feels comfortable talking to the administrator, and the administrator feels talking to the higher eds, our superintendents, our heads of states, things like that. There has to be a clear communication. If something isn't working, we need to be able to discuss that. And that's around creating a safe environment for everyone involved, creating a community of learners. And if we don't have that, then we don't have a school.
See, and that's funny because you say teachers working long hours. Here we are thinking teachers got the whole summer off doing what they want to do. So we're like, oh man, teachers get off at 2:00, 6:00 out there having a beer, having fun. So a lot of the public is not aware of what the teachers go through. But something I was wanting to do with my company was lights out, time's up. But something I wanted to do was parents, teachers. A lot of parents are going through it. They don't know. So, and then they spend a lot of time at home with their parents, and you're influenced by them. You spend all weekend with them. You see them every night. What does the school do for the parents? How are you taking the burden off of the parents? Are you communicating with the parents? Some parents need a community education, personal finance. I'm working on a course where the parent and the parent and the student learn together. You should expose your kids to the bills. They should know, hey, we ain't got it. You don't want your kid 18 thinking they're going to get a pair of Jordans. No, you're going to get some Shaqs until you get some Jordans. That's just the way it works around here. And then a lot of times I see a lot of parents, they give their kids the world. Well, you got to buy it when you get to be an adult. And now you created a standard of living that they can't maintain. And I think that's a huge problem. So, there just needs to be a big conversation about schools, but I think it has to start statewide. The federal government controls too much, and a lot of what goes on in schools is determined by the money. Like, oh, well, if you're not going to do it right, we're not going to give you a check. You have to. What are you going to do? Just let kids not get any resources? So when they say we're going to cut off federal funding, how? What's going to happen then? Now you're going to have to build prisons because those same kids are going to go to jail. So I don't really truly understand the education system, what they're doing. I watched Waiting for Superman. Great documentary. They need to do another one. That's been almost 12 years, 12, 15 years now. They need to update it and show it again. But like you said, there's probably a lot going on in schools that we don't know about. And that's why we have you coming into this space. We brought you on this podcast to bring this to our listeners and our viewers. But before we get out of here, where can the good people find you? Where can they contact you far as education, diversity, inclusion? Where can they, if somebody wants to follow up with you and say, hey, I like what you're talking about. I want to be a part of your program. I want to help.
So Thank you so much for having me. Right now, like I said, we're in our infancy stage. So you can contact me at johnson9931@gmail.com. I'm also working out our email, so we'll send all of that information once it's completely finalized. But yes, that's where we're at.
And for somebody who's looking to take that leap in entrepreneurship, what is the best advice that you can give them?
Plan, dive your heart into it. Make sure that you're doing something that you absolutely love and would want to do forever, because I think that it's a big leap of faith, but just be passionate about it. I think that's where it's really at. Be passionate about whatever you're doing and go after it.
And my advice, you better have 6 months of rent. Your ass going on the street. Don't go talking about you being an entrepreneur and you going to stay at your mama running her bill up. Don't do that. Get it together. And if you go, and listen, you can be a part-time entrepreneur, which means you still have a job and you're funding your business. So don't, and if you quit, go back. I did. The unemployment ran out. I said, I got to go back. So I was doing good, but I gave myself 6 months, but I learned how to run my business. I learned so much about business in those 6 months. I needed that. And then I went back. Now I have my own assistant. So, and another thing, you don't always have to quit. Hire the help. Get help. That's what I did. It ain't cheap, but it works. We want to thank Ms. Dorena for being a part of our podcast, and thank you all for listening. Go to www.stressmoneyless.com. Improve your credit, improve your personal finance. Stop running around poor. You can't eat chicken pot pies your whole life. Get you some good chicken. And you can do that with better finances. www.cheapnotbroke.com. Learn how to travel. Go see the world. You don't have to pay too much to do it. We'd like to thank our guests. We will be back next week. I have been your host, Malcolm Hall. Until next time, take care. We'll see you.